Marco Rubio's speech in Munich, and also AOC and how her presidential run has come to an end before it's even begun. So we'll get into that. Also, the partial government shutdown involving TSA, FEMA, and also the Coast Guard. We'll talk about that as well. The Obama era 2009 endangerment finding. This is one of the biggest deregulation stories, I think, in modern American history. It's not getting a lot of press, but this is going to help you out tremendously. So I want to talk about it. We're going to have an expert on with us on Thursday evening to talk about it, but I'm just going to give you some of the basic things that were accomplished with the Trump administration ending this Obama era finding. What is it called? The endangerment finding. So I've had Mark Moreno on to talk about this before. He will join us again later this week, but I want to make sure that we make mention of it because it is absolutely huge. We are done with the decline. Again, we're going to get into the Marco Rubio speech. Also, Trump's weighty decision on Iran. Listen, I think, this isn't an easy decision. I understand a lot of people don't want Trump to get involved so deeply in a foreign policy. But frankly, I believe that if Trump knocks out Iran, and if we can do this without, obviously, this isn't going to be easy. But if Trump could knock out the mullahs of Iran and the Ayatollah and give the people a chance in Iran, I think the options going forward are perhaps better for not just for the people of Iran, but frankly for the world as we know it. So I will get into that as well. Also, stop calling it President's Day. Did you guys know that there's no such thing as President's Day? There was never a law enacted inside of the United States to call President's Day President's Day. We would celebrate George Washington's birthday. Later, we added Lincoln's birthday. I'm just going to give you my take on that. I think that we should return to calling it George Washington Day and Abraham Lincoln's birthday. I think we should celebrate those birthdays. And so I'll get into why momentarily. But first, one of the things that I want to do is I want to start with Rubio's speech. Well, actually, before we get to Rubio's speech, I want to I want to show you AOC. AOC traveled to Munich, Germany. So did some other people on the left, people that are wanting to become president of the United States, and so they want to kind of secure their foreign policy bona fides. So this Munich Security Conference, AOC was there, Gretchen Whitmer was there, Governor Gavin Newsom was there, and all of these guys are trying to again just bolster their foreign policy bona fides, bolster their relationships with Europe. AOC was trying to do the same thing. Excuse me. There's been rumors that AOC wants to seek higher office, whether that's the Senate and go after Chuck Schumer, whether that's the presidency itself. That's something that she wanted to do. Perhaps she would still have a shot in the Senate with New York. I'm not sure of that, but she definitely, if she had any desire to run for president, I would run the ads from this from AOC in Munich, Germany, because she absolutely self-destructed. Let's go to cut number 3, and I want you guys to ask again. In 2026, there's going to be a midterms. In 2028, there's going to be another presidential election. But I want you guys to sit here and contemplate and think when we play you these videos, are these the people that you want in charge? Many people are saying that the Democrat Party has been co-opted by the left, by the Bernie Sanders, by the AOCs of the world. Ask yourself, is this the person that you want in power? You may hate Trump. That's fine. I want you to pay attention to his policies. All right. Personality, I get it. You may not like the man. His policies, not all of them have been perfect, but he's been doing a lot of good as president of the United States. And if we go back to what we had under the Biden administration and probably worse, I'm not sure that America could survive for a long time enduring what we endured during the Biden administration. I mean, it was just rough. But let's play clip number 3, and then we're going to play Marco Rubio's speech after we go through some AOC clips in its totality. We're also going to talk about the government shutdown, partial government shutdown. and why the Democrats are shutting down the government. Just some reminders, obviously, voter ID and ICE, they don't like it. So we'll get into that. But let's start with cut number 3. This is AOC self destructing in, in Munich. Let's roll it.
Would and should the US actually commit US troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
You know, I think that this is such a, I think that this is this is of course a very longstanding policy of the United States. And I think what we are hoping for is that we want to make sure that we never get to that point, and we want to make sure that we are moving in all of our economic research and our global positions to avoid any such confrontation and for that question to even arise.
Okay. That's AOC. I think that a lot of people sitting in that room were like, that probably can't stand Trump, were like, MAGA, make America great again. Listen, China wants to take over Taiwan. We already know that. I mean, in their minds, Taiwan is China. And how are you going to stop that? How is AOC going to stop that? Should we have boots on the ground? We don't necessarily have to have boots on the ground. We can do many of the things that we see President Trump doing now. He's weakening China, frankly, by just drilling, using tariffs. I think he should use tariffs primarily against China to continue to weaken their economy. Look at what's happening, whether it's Venezuela. All of these nations were working together to try to bring down the status of the United States of America. Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. President Trump has weakened Iran. China has to take, because of what President Trump has done in Venezuela, because of what President Trump has done in Iran, then you have China having to second guess whether it's worth it going into Taiwan or not. And that's because President Trump has decided that we are going to be a dominating force around the globe, that we are going to be numero uno. That's not what AOC wants. That's not something that she even gets or understands, because, as you know, she's a communist and she wants to bring America down to size. So if you want an AOC in office, just understand that the world's dictators are going to run shop, because it's obvious that she has no clue what she's talking about. Let's go to another cut. This is AOC getting schooled on geography, cut number 11. She talks about Venezuela, but listen to what she says about Venezuela. Cut number 11, please, Gabe.
You know, we look at what happened in Venezuela, for example. It is not a it is not a remark on who Maduro was as a leader. He canceled elections. He was an anti-democratic leader. That doesn't mean that we can kidnap a head of state and engage in acts of war just because the nation is below the equator. And by the way,
okay, so I'm disturbed by the clapping. I'm equally as disturbed by the clapping as I am of AOC going to try to be a strong man or strong woman for the United States of America, talk foreign policy, and again, have no clue of what she's talking about. I only hope, now, mainstream media in the United States isn't going to play this, but I'm hoping that the seals that were clapping in the audience will somehow get their hands on the video that we just showed you with the picture of the map showing that Venezuela is not below the equator. It's in Central America. I mean, this this is dumbfounding because this is what we have in people like AOC. We have social media influencers who are primarily social media influencers that like the attention, that like the power, and they get into legitimate power and they have no clue what to do. They don't know how to run a country. They've never run a business. I mean, they've barely been out of school long enough to try to run their lives on their own, quite frankly. So a lot of these people, including AOC, absolutely have no clue in what they're talking about. And remember, if I'm not mistaken, AOC went to a prestigious university. I believe it was Boston University. So how the heck she got in there, I have no idea. Do we have enough time to play cut number 10, Gabe? If not, we'll come back and play it. And then I want to get into. Okay, so when we get back, I want to play a couple more clips of AOC, and then I want to get into Marco Rubio. I believe that AOC, essentially, if AOC wanted to run for president, it's over. And actually, this is an indictment on Chuck Schumer as well, because I really do believe that if Chuck Schumer would have put the pressure on AOC, if he had not kowtowed to the radical left of his party, he would be in a better position to keep his seat or remain in office if he so chooses to go. These people are absolutely clueless. And so Chuck Schumer could have schooled AOC. Instead, he's kowtowed to her, and he's losing the Democrat Party as a result. We'll be back. You mean the equator? Oh, is it? Yeah, that makes sense. Like like the country Ecuador, it's pronounced the same way. All right. Oh man, yes, do we? Yes, we do. Okay, let's see what we have. Oh wow. Yes, I do. Oh, well, it's happened before. I appreciate you telling me that. We will look into that. Thank you. Thank you. Frankly, I've wondered about that in some places, so I really appreciate that. Oh, okay, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So, is that was that Enchilada, Texas? I like that. I like that. That's pretty clever. I love enchiladas. I was about to order some last night. My wife and I went out, and I didn't, and I regretted it. But anyway, it made me think of that. But he says, or he or she, I believe he says that we're being shadow banned, and I wouldn't doubt that. If you guys would help me out, spread the message far and wide, like and share, and subscribe to this podcast wherever you go to get your podcast to help us out. Listen, there's been funny things going on with some of the numbers on some of the outlets. There's no doubt about it. I thought we were past that, but who knows? We got some messages from Facebook that kind of surprised us, and it was really weird. And perhaps it's happening in other locations as well. So we will look into that. I appreciate that. Okay. The only thing she could be capable of is being a puppet. Yeah, actually, that is probably. I always knew. He says, "Will you put that back up for me, Gabe?" I'm sorry. That's from uh, Benny Franklin. Olson. I always knew the only thing she could be capable of is being a puppet. You are more right than perhaps you even know. Um, and you may know the history of AOC, where literally she basically was acting. She had to go and perform to see whether or not they would let her run for Congress, and basically she was acting and competing. I forget the entirety of the story, but basically it was a bunch of actors that uh, had to read scripts, had to do some acting. And then you had these left wing organizations that were going to help them get into Congress. And that's exactly what happened with AOC. And again, I forget all of the ins and outs of that story, but that is a true legitimate story. She was put in Congress to be a puppet for the radical left. So there's no doubt about it. And she believes it, to her credit. She has. She kind of has a likability factor. She's good at social media, but when it comes to policy, you can see she has no clue. She is clueless. All right, Gabe, let's get back into this. Por favor. Yes. All right, welcome back to the program. Before we get to Marco Rubio's brilliant speech, and we're going to break it down, and we have to for copyright purposes. It's a 21-minute speech, but it's a speech worth hearing. We're going to pause in between and just comment, but we will get through it. And I just think it's important for you to hear. And I'm going to make a case, too, after you listen to Marco Rubio as to why I don't believe that J.D. Vance should be coronated as the next president of the United States to take over for Trump. I know that's going to make some people mad. I get that. And I'm not saying I don't want J.D. Vance to be the next president. Frankly, his communication skills are absolutely amazing, and he may make a great president. I don't believe in coronations. And frankly, the more that people see Marco Rubio, I think it's going to be harder. I think it's going to be harder for people to want a coronation for J.D. Vance. And also, you still get DeSantis lingering out there, and who's doing a fabulous job in Florida, but obviously he'll be absent once he leaves the governorship for a few years off the national scene, unless Trump brings him into his administration and he was golfing with Trump. So who knows? Maybe it's just a friendly game of golf. Maybe it's something more. I don't know. We'll get into that. But nonetheless, let me take you back to the brilliant one, AOC. If we can go to cut number 10, she tried to, and again, we'll get to Marco Rubio's speech. And I'm kind of doing this backwards, right? I want you to understand that her chances for running for president, in my opinion, they have gone out the window. Now, I understand that the Democrat Party, they are largely an emotional party. They don't necessarily care about policy. They just want to know who they should hate. Because their policies never help anyone. That's the reason why they're bringing in a bunch of illegals to continue to vote for them, because people that have common sense won't vote for them, or once they get some common sense, once they earn a decent income, they don't want to vote for people that do absolutely nothing except take a bunch of their money. The Democrat Party is totally inept, and so. Anyway, that's where we are. But I want to play this clip for you. This is AOC. This is cut number 10. Por favor, Gabe. She tried to bash Marco Rubio. And again, we'll play this. This is a little backwards. Then we'll play Marco Rubio's speech, and you'll understand why this was a very faulty move on her part. Her career, if she wanted to run for president, it's over. I think even Democrats might see this and say, we don't need Kamala Harris part 2. All right. Cut number 10, please.
Rubio's speech was a pure appeal to Western culture. My favorite part was when he said that American cowboys came from Spain.
I thought they came from Winnetou, but
I believe the Mexicans and descendants of African enslaved peoples would like to have a word on that.
Okay, Western culture. Isn't Europe part of Western culture? Spaniards aren't they what we consider Latinos as well? Apparently, I didn't know this, but apparently AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is named after the guy that brought horses to the United States. Is that? Anyway, we'll look into that. If that's true, that is absolutely insane and hilarious. But Western civilization, that's interesting. That's interesting, as Alec Baldwin would say. This AOC is completely clueless, and I think she did the Democrat Party a disservice. This is how you'll be able to tell that AOC did the Democrat Party a disservice by going to the Munich Security Conference, a conference that has been going on for decades, several decades now. If you see AOC being played, these videos, these clips being played on MSNBC CBS, CNN, you know that she did a great job. If you don't, you know that she bombed completely. And I'm going to take a gamut that she bombed completely, and that's simply because we know she did. Now, without any further ado, wait a minute. Do I have one more AOC clip before we go to this? Just a super cut. So let's go to Marco Rubio's speech. Now, let me say this before we go to Marco Rubio's speech, and I made mention of it briefly. I think this speech, in my opinion, proves why we should not have a coronation of JD Vance. I'm not even saying that JD Vance isn't a better candidate than Rubio. For those of you that know me, if you've listened to my show for any period of time, you know that I like Rubio. I've always liked Rubio. I was never in love with Rubio as a senator. I thought he was a good senator. At times, I thought he was a great senator. I never felt like he was an exceptional senator. Remember, Marco Rubio was part of the Gang of Eight when he first entered the Senate. This is something that he promised he wouldn't do. He wouldn't work on. He wouldn't work on amnesty when he got to Congress. This is what he promised those of us that were in Florida. And then as soon as he got there, he became part of the Gang of Eight with John McCain and some of the other moderates out there, and it just totally destroyed him. This is a person I remember going to listen to a speech with a buddy of mine that was running for Congress at the time, Todd Long, and I went to listen to a speech with him, and he turned to me and said, "You just watched the next president of the United States," and for sure, I thought we did. I thought we did, but he comes into the Senate. He does it. He works with the Gang of Eight, does this amnesty bill. A lot of people turn on him, including myself. Trump comes down the escalator later. That's all she wrote. That's all she wrote. But now, you listen to Marco Rubio, it's like he's learned a thing or two. When it comes to foreign policy, I mean, the guy just knows his stuff. And I wonder now, having seen illegals and the terrorists that have come into our nation, the problems that open borders have caused, I wonder if it's given him pause where he's been like, okay, maybe I was wrong. And I believe that may be the case. I hope that's the case, because the way he's speaking now, man, if he did decide to run, that would be a primary for you behind, as they say. Now, he's said that he's not going to do that. But listen, man, I think that competition is a necessary thing. I don't want a coronation. I don't want a dogfight. I don't want it to get nasty. I know that primaries can do that. And we'll see. I mean, maybe JD Vance is kind of, maybe a lot of Republicans will just say, listen, let's go straight to JD Vance after Donald Trump. But I would make mention of this too. You guys remember that Vogue article where everybody was like, why would Susie Wiles interview with Vogue magazine, a left-wing magazine? I want to remind you guys of something that Susie Wiles said in that interview about JD Vance and about Marco Rubio. And I'm not convinced, you can't convince me, that President Trump didn't know that she said these things. When it comes to JD Vance, she said, well, JD Vance kind of came along, later. I'm paraphrasing. He came along later, kind of a political guy, kind of an opportunist. I'm paraphrasing. Marco Rubio, he got it early on. Everybody likes him. And I'm paraphrasing again. But when I heard those comments, out of everything, all the chaos and Republicans, no, why did she do this? This was a big mistake on her part. I just sat there. Those comments stood out to me so much. I said to myself, that's odd. President Trump, or Susie Wiles, chief of staff, says JD Vance, we know he's a talent, but he's kind of an opportunist. JD Vance, of course, knocked that. That's just Vogue making up stuff. But Marco Rubio came along earlier. Marco Rubio gets Trump, and I'm paraphrasing. Everyone likes Marco Rubio. everyone likes Marco Rubio. I just thought that was fascinating. I wondered if they were trying to send a message. Um, Perhaps what I'll do is I will wait on, because we got to take a break here in just a minute or so. I want to start the Marco Rubio speech cleanly, so we will do that when we get back from the break. But before we go to the break, I do want to make mention of a couple of things. Obviously, President Trump is weighing the decision on Iran pretty heavily. News. He said one door is marked Truman Reagan and the other door is marked Carter Obama Biden. President Donald Trump has to choose one again. And this time, the choice will define Trump's place in history. He writes, on 3 different occasions, the 45th and 47th president of the United States has walked through the first door. Trump ordered the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Quds Force of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard. That was on January 30th of 2020. Trump followed that up with his second term order to conduct Operation Midnight Resolve. That was against Iran's nuclear weapons facility in June of last year. And again, with Operation Absolute Resolve to snatch Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro in January of this year, he writes. Trump ventured boldly 3 times and won big for the United States 3 times, restoring American deterrence along the way. Rarely do we see such a stark choice presented to a president, a fork in his personal road as far as his history is concerned, and very much a fork in America's future. Will Trump do it again with Iran? We will wait and see, but I hope he does. We'll be back. Yeah, let's go right to Marco Rubio. Cut number 9. Yeah, we can do it. Let me take a swig. Actually, let me take a swig.
We gather here today as members of a historic alliance, an alliance that saved and changed the world. You know, when this conference began in 1963, it was in a nation, actually it was on a continent, that was divided against itself. The line between communism and freedom ran through the heart of Germany. The first barbed fences of the Berlin Wall had gone up just 2 years prior. And just months before that first conference, before our predecessors first met here in Munich, the Cuban Missile Crisis had brought the world to the brink of nuclear destruction. Even as World War II still burned fresh in the memory of Americans and Europeans alike, we found ourselves staring down the barrel of a new global catastrophe. One with the potential for a new kind of destruction, more apocalyptic and final than anything before in the history of mankind. The time of that first gathering, Soviet communism was on the march. Thousands of years of Western civilization hung in the balance. At that time, victory was far from certain. But we were driven by a common purpose. We were unified not just by what we were fighting against. We were unified by what we were fighting for. And together, Europe and America prevailed. And a continent was rebuilt. Our people prospered. In time, the East and West blocks were reunited. A civilization was once again made whole. That infamous wall that had cleaved this nation into 2 came down, and with it, an evil empire. And the East and West became one again. But the euphoria of this triumph led us to a dangerous delusion that we had entered, quote, the end of history, that every nation would now be a liberal democracy, that the ties formed by trade and by commerce alone would now replace nationhood, that the rules-based global order, an overused term, would now replace the national interest, and that we would now live in a world without borders where everyone became a citizen of the world. This was a foolish idea that ignored both human nature and it ignored the lessons of over 5,000 years of recorded human history. And it has cost us dearly.
Let's stop right there
for a second. In
second.
this delusion, we embraced a...
I mean, it's a delusion. This idea of globalism, this idea of just open free trade and commerce would replace nationalism. It's an absolute delusion. The fact that Marco Rubio gets this, I don't know if I'm sure he had a part in writing this speech. Maybe he wrote this speech. He's obviously have speech writers, but I'd imagine that he had a lot of input in this speech. This is a man that gets it. This is a man that understands the greatness and the exceptionalism of the United States of America, but also of Europe and Western civilization and how we're losing that. This speech is so important, and the way he sets the tone, you could already see the room. The room is standing on pins and needles, or sitting on pins and needles, however the phrase goes. You saw one of the men in the beginning of the video. I mean, when Marco Rubio was like a minute in, he's looking to his left, looking to his right, because Marco Rubio has their attention. Let's go on with this video. You're listening to the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, in his Munich, with his speech in Munich, Germany.
We gather here to live in a world without borders where everyone became a citizen of the world. This was a foolish idea that ignored both human nature and it ignored the lessons of over 5,000 years of recorded human history. And it has cost us dearly. In this delusion, we embraced a dogmatic vision of free and unfettered trade, even as some nations protected their economies and subsidized their companies to systematically undercut ours, shuttering our plants, resulting in large parts of our societies being deindustrialized, shipping millions of working and middle-class jobs overseas, and handing control of our critical supply chains to both adversaries and rivals. We increasingly outsourced our sovereignty to international institutions while many nations invested in massive welfare states at the cost of maintaining the ability to defend themselves. This, even as other countries have invested in the most rapid military buildup in all of human history and have not hesitated to use hard power to pursue their own interests. To appease a climate cult, we have imposed energy policies on ourselves that are impoverishing our people, even as our competitors exploit oil and coal and natural gas and anything else, not just to power their economies, but to use as leverage against our own. And in a pursuit of a world without borders, we opened our doors to an unprecedented wave of mass migration that threatens the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our culture, and the future of our people. We made these mistakes together. And now, together, we owe it to our people to face those facts and to move forward to rebuild. Under President Trump, the United States of America will once again take on the task of renewal and restoration, driven by a vision of a future as proud, as sovereign, and as vital as our civilization's past. And while we are prepared, if necessary, to do this alone, it is our preference and it is our hope to do this together with you, our friends here in Europe. For the United States and Europe, we belong together. America was founded 250 years ago, but the roots began here on this continent long before. The men who settled and built the nation of my birth arrived on our shores carrying the memories and the traditions and the Christian faith of their ancestors as a sacred inheritance, an unbreakable link between the old world and the new. We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices our forefathers made together for the common civilization to which we have fallen heir. And so this is why we Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent in our counsel. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends, is because we care deeply. We care deeply about your future and ours. And if at times we disagree, our disagreements come from our profound sense of concern about a Europe with which we are connected not just economically, not just militarily. We are connected spiritually, and we are connected culturally. We want Europe to be strong. We believe that Europe must survive. Because the two great wars of the last century serve for us as history's constant reminder that ultimately our destiny is and will always be intertwined with yours. Because we know
Let's pause it there for a sec while they're applauding. We are connected spiritually. Who who says that? You don't hear that anymore. Europe has lost their way. Europe has become largely an atheistic continent. And yet you have foreigners flooding in, mostly Islamic foreigners flooding in, and they're growing in number. They're growing in influence. I love this speech. I love the way that he appealed to them as our friends. I love the way that he took on the climate cult. I'll get into that a little later. With this endangerment finding that the Trump administration has wiped out, that's going to be absolutely beneficial to you guys. The delusion, the delusion of being citizens of the world. We ship jobs overseas, but he's calling them friends. He's appealing to guys. We're connected spiritually. We're connected culturally. He's appealing to them, and it's working. I think their hearts are melting. I hope they listen to this speech more. Let's play. Let's start back up with Marco Rubio. Okay, well, just 1 minute before the break, we'll shut it down at the break and then continue afterward. So let's roll.
We gather here today as members of a historic alliance, an alliance that saved and changed the world. You know, when this conference began in 1963, it was in a nation will never be irrelevant to our own. National security, which this conference is largely about, is not merely a series of technical questions. How much we spend on defense or where, how we deploy it, these are important questions. They are. But they are not the fundamental one. The fundamental question we must answer at the outset is, what exactly are we defending? Because armies do not fight for abstractions. Armies fight for a people. Armies fight for a nation. Armies fight for a way of life. And that is what we are defending. A great civilization that has every reason to be proud of its history, confident of its future, and aims to always be the master of its own economic and political destiny.
Let's pause it there.
It was here in
Let's
Europe.
pause it there. More with Marco
where the ideas
Rubio
that
after
planted
the
the
break.
seeds of liberty that
Guys, I appreciate you tuning in. If you're watching live, we're listening to Marco Rubio's speech at the Munich Security Conference. And obviously, it's just a speech, man. Speeches aren't policy. Obviously, we saw that with Barack Obama. I do believe that Marco Rubio would be a way better president than Barack Obama ever could. But the one thing I give Rubio credit for, and I like all of these guys, man. I like all of the guys that could potentially run as president of the United States so far, despite the fact that most people, I think, want to coronate J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is one of the most gifted communicators that I think I've seen in politics, especially off of his feet. He is extremely good, extremely well-versed. However, when I look at everything that President Trump fought for, everything that President Trump ran on, what was a surprise, but not a surprise, is the Dunn Road Doctrine. And I'm not convinced that J.D. Vance would do something like that or be able to pull something like that off. I'm not even sure how much he necessarily believes in the Dunn Road Doctrine, making the Western Hemisphere strong. And I don't think we do that and abandon our allies necessarily in the East. Although at times, I love the way that Trump smacks them around, frankly, because if we don't share the same values, then you're not necessarily an ally. And the NATO ally has gotten weaker and weaker and weaker. But I look at what President Trump has been able to do with this done road doctrine. And I know many people that voted for Trump, oh, we don't want to get involved in any foreign policy. Guys, he's making it where we don't have to get involved in long-term entangling wars that we have no business being a part of. And he's doing it, much of it, with oil. It's it's phenomenal. But you get rid of Iran, you bomb their nuclear facilities, you let Israel take out some of their players, you take out some of their players, and you start weakening these people that want to undermine Western civilization. We'd love to get along with you, but if you want to kill us, if you say we're the great Satan, anyway, I'm giving a show here. When yeah, let's all right. But all right, actually, maybe I'll come back in with that because word it a little differently. I appreciate you guys tuning in live right before we get back to the speech. So I'll just come straight to me. Not the speech yet. Okay, welcome back to the program. If you were joining me live, you were able to hear me kind of going off in between in between segments here, and you know, Gabe whispered in my ear, and I kind of felt the same. Like, this is something that should be on air, and I'm not gonna do the whole entire rant. In fact, I don't remember it all. But I did speak of there's three people that I really love that could possibly be the next president in my mind of the United States of America, or that would be good candidates in the primary. And that is JD Vance, obviously. That is Marco Rubio, who said he would not run against JD Vance. I think that's a mistake. And Governor Ron DeSantis. But you look at all of these people, and one thing I didn't finish saying during the break, and please like, share, and subscribe to this podcast, The Carl Jackson Show, wherever you go to get your podcast, all things social media at Carl Jackson Show, at The Carl Jackson Show. We'll go back to the speech momentarily. But I look at all of these guys, and JD Vance is one of the best communicators that I've seen in politics, especially off of his feet. Marco Rubio is one of the most, if not the most, next to Reagan, inspiring speaker I've ever seen in politics. And then you have President Trump, one of the most brilliant tacticians, and you have Governor DeSantis, one of the most brilliant tacticians, in my opinion. Obviously, President Trump can't run again. I don't think Governor DeSantis has the speaking skills of a Marco Rubio. I don't think he communicates as well off of his feet as a JD Vance. But I frankly believe he's probably the closest to Trump, perhaps even more conservative than Trump. But I look at Marco Rubio, and honestly, this guy's astonishing me. He was made for Secretary of State. This is absolutely inspiring. And I believe it's probably melting the tension. President Trump is a bull in a china shop. We all know that. And now Marco Rubio comes. Guys, it's almost like the man of steel and velvet. I read a book about this years ago. Somebody gave me this book. It was about Jesus and how basically Jesus uses, in a sense, and I'm paraphrasing here, correction and or punishment, but he also has that loving way about him, those loving arms wrapped around you, where he's correcting you in order to shape you, in order to build you, because he loves you. And this is the feeling that you're getting with Marco Rubio as he's explaining President Trump's policy. Man, I tell you, I'm just inspired by this speech. There's times where I don't want to watch a lot of video. I don't want to, I just want to talk. I want to talk about politics. I want to talk to you. This is one of those times I'm actually excited to listen. Let's continue with Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the Munich Security Conference.
Of liberty that changed the world were born. It was here in Europe where the world which gave the world the rule of law, the universities, and the scientific revolution. It was this continent that produced the genius of Mozart and Beethoven, of Dante and Shakespeare, of Michelangelo and Da Vinci, of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And this is the place where the vaulted ceilings of the Sistine Chapel and the towering spires of the great cathedral in Cologne, they testify not just to the greatness of our past or to a faith in God that inspired these marvels. They foreshadow the wonders that await
Look
us
at the audience.
in our future. But only if we are unapologetic in our heritage and proud of this common inheritance can we together begin the work of envisioning and shaping our economic and our political future. Deindustrialization was not inevitable. It was a conscious policy choice, a decades-long economic undertaking that stripped our nations of their wealth, of their productive capacity, and of their independence. And the loss of our supply chain sovereignty was not a function of a prosperous and healthy system of global trade. It was foolish. It was a foolish but voluntary transformation of our economy that left us dependent on others for our needs and dangerously vulnerable to crisis. Mass migration isn't some fringe concern of little consequence. It was and continues to be a crisis which is transforming and destabilizing societies all across the West. Together, we can reindustrialize our economies and rebuild our capacity to defend our people. But the work of this new alliance should not be focused just on military cooperation and reclaiming the industries of the past. It should also be focused on together advancing our mutual interests in new frontiers, unshackling our ingenuity, our creativity, and the dynamic spirit to build a new Western century. Commercial space travel and cutting-edge artificial intelligence, industrial automation and flex manufacturing, creating a Western supply chain for critical minerals not vulnerable to extortion from other powers, and a unified effort to compete for market share in the economies of the global South. Together, we can not only take back control of our own industries and supply chains, we can prosper in the areas that will define the 21st century. But we must also gain control of our national borders. Controlling who and how many people enter our countries, this is not an expression of xenophobia, it is not hate. It is a fundamental act of national sovereignty. And the failure to do so is not just an abdication of one of our most basic duties owed to our people. It is an urgent threat to the fabric of our societies and the survival of our civilization itself. And finally, we can no longer place the so-called global order above the vital interests of our people and our nations. We do not need to abandon the system of international cooperation we authored. And we don't need to dismantle the global institutions of the old order that together we built. But these must be reformed. These must be rebuilt. For example, the United Nations still has tremendous potential to be a tool for good in the world. But we cannot ignore that today, on the most pressing matters before us, it has no answers and has played virtually no role. It could not solve the war in Gaza. Instead, it was American leadership that freed captives from barbarians and brought about a fragile truce. It has not solved the war in Ukraine. It took American leadership in partnership with many of the countries here today just to bring the two sides to the table in search of a still elusive peace. It was powerless to constrain the nuclear program of radical Shia clerics in Tehran. That required 14 bombs dropped with precision from American B-2 bombers. And it was unable to address the threat to our security from a narco-terrorist dictator in Venezuela. Instead, it took American special forces to bring this fugitive to justice. In a perfect world, all of these problems and more would be solved by diplomats and strongly worded resolutions. But we do not live in a perfect world. And we cannot continue to allow those who blatantly and openly threaten our citizens and endanger our global stability to shield themselves behind abstractions of international law which they themselves routinely violate. This is the path that President Trump and the United States has embarked upon. It is the path we ask you here in Europe to join us on. It is a path we have walked together before and hope to walk together again. For 5 centuries, before the end of the Second World War, the West had been expanding. Its missionaries, its pilgrims, its soldiers, its explorers pouring out from its shores to cross oceans, settle new continents, build vast empires extending out across the globe. But in 1945, for the first time since the age of Columbus, it was contracting. Europe was in ruins. Half of it lived behind an iron curtain, and the rest looked like it would soon follow. The great Western empires had entered into terminal decline, accelerated by godless communist revolutions and by anti-colonial uprisings that would transform the world and drape the red hammer and sickle across vast swaths of the map in the years to come. Against that backdrop, then as now, many came to believe that the West's age of dominance had come to an end, and that our future was destined to be a faint and feeble echo of our past. But together, our predecessors recognized that decline was a choice, and it was a choice they refused to make. This is what we did together once before, and this is what President Trump and the United States want to do again now, together with you. And this is why we do not want our allies to be weak, because that makes us weaker. We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength. This is why we do not want our allies to be shackled by guilt and shame. We want allies who are proud of their culture and of their heritage, who understand that we are heirs to the same great and noble civilization, and who together with us are willing and able to defend it. And this is why we do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate.
Let's pause it there. I thought we would finish up before the break, but we don't have enough time. We'll wrap it up on the other side. This is the Carl Jackson Show. Okay, let's come back in. Let's go right back. Oh, there's still 6 minutes on that video. Will you let me know if cut number 15 is a compilation of the AOC videos that we played? Okay, so it's a bit of all of them in one. All right, we'll play that after his speech, just as a reminder, because I think what we'll do for SNC is, anyway, I'll talk to you about it afterwards. Okay. Yeah, please. Yes, Marquito. I tell you what, man. I know a lot of people love him, man. I'm a little iffy. He was a little weak with Second Amendment. Those are the things that scare me. But you hear speeches like this, it's like, frankly, I think a lot of people do. But I don't know. All right.
But to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency. An alliance is the alliance that we want is one that is not paralyzed into inaction by fear. Fear of climate change, fear of war, fear of technology. Instead, we want an alliance that boldly races into the future. And the only fear we have is the fear of the shame of not leaving our nations prouder, stronger, and wealthier for our children. An alliance ready to defend our people, to safeguard our interests, and to preserve the freedom of action that allows us to shape our own destiny. Not one that exists to operate a global welfare state and atone for the purported sins of past generations. An alliance that does not allow its power to be outsourced, constrained, or subordinated to systems beyond its control. one that does not depend on others for the critical necessities of its national life, and one that does not maintain the polite pretense that our way of life is just one among many, and that asks for permission before it acts. And above all, an alliance based on the recognition that we, the West, have inherited together. What we have inherited together is something that is unique and distinctive and irreplaceable, because this, after all, is the very foundation of the transatlantic bond. Acting together in this way, we will not just help recover a sane foreign policy, it will restore to us a clearer sense of ourselves. It will restore a place in the world. And in so doing, it will rebuke and deter the forces of civilizational erasure that today menace both America and Europe alike. So in a time of headlines heralding the end of the transatlantic era, let it be known and clear to all that this is neither our goal nor our wish. Because for us Americans, our home may be in the Western Hemisphere, but we will always be a child of Europe. Our story began with an Italian explorer whose adventure into the great unknown to discover a new world brought Christianity to the Americas and became the legend that defined the imagination of our pioneer nation. Our first colonies were built by English settlers, to whom we owe not just the language we speak, but the whole of our political and legal system. Our frontiers were shaped by Scots-Irish, that proud, hardy clan from the hills of Ulster that gave us Davy Crockett and Mark Twain and Teddy Roosevelt and Neil Armstrong. Our great Midwestern heartland was built by German farmers and craftsmen who transformed empty plains into a global agricultural powerhouse. And by the way, dramatically upgraded the quality of American beer. Our expansion into the interior followed the footsteps of French fur traders and explorers whose names, by the way, still adorn the street signs and town names all across the Mississippi Valley. Our horses, our ranches, our rodeos, the entire romance of the cowboy archetype that became synonymous with the American West. These were born in Spain. And our largest and most iconic city was named New Amsterdam before it was named New York. And you know that in the year that my country was founded, Lorenzo and Catalina Giraldi lived in Casal Monferrato in the Kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia. And Jose and Manuel Arena lived in Sevilla, Spain. I don't know what, if anything, they knew about the 13 colonies which had gained their independence from the British Empire. But here's what I'm certain of. They could have never imagined that 250 years later, one of their direct descendants would be back here today on this continent as the chief diplomat of that infant nation.
Wow.
And yet here I am,
Powerful.
reminded by my own story that both our histories and our fates will always be linked. Together, we rebuilt a shattered continent in the wake of 2 devastating world wars. When we found ourselves divided once again by the Iron Curtain, the Free West linked arms with the courageous dissidents struggling against tyranny in the East to defeat Soviet communism. We have fought against each other, then reconciled, then fought, then reconciled again. And we have bled and died side by side on battlefields from Kapyong to Kandahar. And I'm here today to leave it clear that America is charting the path for a new century of prosperity, and that once again, we want to do it together with you, our cherished allies and our oldest friends.
I mean, I just want to get up and clap.
We want to do it together with you, with a Europe that is proud of its heritage and of its history, with a Europe that has the spirit of creation and liberty that sent ships out into uncharted seas and birthed our civilization, with a Europe that has the means to defend itself and the will to survive. We should be proud of what we achieved together in the last century. But now we must confront and embrace the opportunities of a new one. Because yesterday is over. The future is inevitable. And our destiny together awaits. Thank you.
Hear, 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 hear. Is that why they hear, hear? I mean, literally, I want to stand up and applaud the guy. I mean, that was so inspiring. And again, speeches aren't necessarily policy, but guys, if we don't want to get caught up in entangling wars, it is incumbent upon our NATO allies to be strong again, to not be taken over from within with all of these foreigners that are coming into their countries and changing the culture, changing the way people vote. And there's parts of Europe, and forgive me, I forget exactly where, but I know there's a part in Europe where literally you have so many Muslims that have come into parts of Europe where they're saying, "Listen, we don't want your dogs out walking in the streets. We don't want you walking your dogs." And you have Europeans that are acquiescing to this nonsense because they don't like dogs. Are you kidding me? You're in my country. This is how these people in these third world countries take over. What are you doing, Europe? See, it's almost like the United States of America is picking Europe up by their bootstraps or perhaps by their collars and saying, "Listen, you can do this. You can be strong again. Remember who you are." That's what I loved about that speech. Sometimes, you know the saying, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. I feel like that's what they were going for there, the Trump administration with Rubio. This isn't a bullet. This isn't firing more bullets. This is you want to bring an end to the Russia-Ukraine war, then Europe, our NATO allies in Europe, I should say, have to care more about ending that war than we do. They've got to stop buying oil from Vladimir Putin, scolding him, yet enriching him, telling him to stop fighting against Ukraine, but funding the war against Ukraine. I don't want to have to fight Europe's wars if they're not willing to defend themselves. Rubio gave them credit for bringing Christianity to America. They've abandoned God in so many facets. He thanked them for the legal system that we have. Greatest legal system in the world. It's not perfect, still the best in the world. He talked about the horses, ranches, and rodeos that were born in Spain, that heritage, that culture. In AOC, earlier I played the video. We were going to play a compilation, but I don't have time for it. And AOC knocked that. Oh, I think what did she say? Mexico might have something to say about that. They're Latino. They've derived from Spain. That culture, the horses, the ranches, all that kind of stuff. That's a derivative of Spain. That derived from Spain. He encouraged them to be proud of their heritage, to be proud of their history, and that's what they're throwing away. It's just a shame. That was one of the better speeches. I hope that some of these European people that have influence, that have power, will walk away. And I just pray to God that that speech will hit them in a way that perhaps no speech ever has or hasn't in a long time. And I hope that Europe will start coming to their senses because we don't want our allies to fall. Again, Marco Rubio said it best. When they're weak, we're weaker too. We're weaker too. It's almost like Trump is getting the world in order without, to the best of his ability, without firing shots. And one of the ways to do that is to make sure that our NATO allies are strong. Such an inspirational speech by Marco Rubio, perhaps the best of his career. All right, this is a Carl Jackson show. We'll be back. All right. I want to segue to just a couple on the shutdown. I wanted to do something on President's Day, but I will just do a segment perhaps on Thursday. I probably should have did it today because it would be meaningful today, but this just taking more time. I want to play a few more of these videos. Excuse me, and then we'll call it a day. It will. It will. And honestly, I think we'll right where we'll start with the. That's why I wanted to play the compilation of AOC. I should have shut my pie hole and played it for all of you that might be listening live, because I thought that you know what I could just play his speech with that compilation of AOC, but I just spoke too much. Ugh. Anyway, okay. Let me. Okay. Let's just start this. I just want to go through some of these videos with ICE, so I'll run through these pretty rapidly, and this will be a podcast in and of itself. Or a separate one. Actually, let's do this. If I could find the cut sheet. I don't have it printed out, but I can scroll for it. Okay. No, I don't have it yet. Oh, okay. Good. I said okay. You're right. I should yeah, I'm going to be scrolling for days. Sorry. Oh, here it is. Hey guys, just real quick, I want to talk to you about My Pillow. They've got a new promo out. So, Mike Lindell and My Pillow employees want to thank you for your great support this past year, and they are looking to make 2026 the best year yet. As a thank you to my listeners, My Pillow is exclusively offering free shipping on your entire order and at wholesale pricing. That means they are bringing back the mega sale exclusively for my listeners. For example, the classic My Pillows are regularly $49.98. I'm sorry, and now they're marked down to $14.98. That's insane. Turn any mattress into the best mattress ever with the made in the USA My Pillow, My Mattress Topper, and you can save up to $100. So get a set of My Pillow Giza Dream Sheets for as low as $29.98, or the 6-pack towel set for only $34.98. To get the best specials ever, go to mypillow.com. Use the promo code Carl, CARL. I don't spell it like the communists, or call them at 800-858-0263. These offers won't last long, so please call 800-858-0263 or go to mypillow.com. Use the promo code Carl. Okay, let's get into this, por favor. Let's go to let's start off with cut number 5, if you would, Gabe.
Does this funding freeze in any way impact or limit your ability to carry out immigration operations across the country?
No, it doesn't. And ICE has continued to enforce law across the country. They're already funded. Now, the ICE officers won't be getting paid, but they're getting used to that, it seems like. So, no, the immigration mission, the reason why President Trump was elected to be president, continues. We have the most secure border in history of the nation. We got record numbers of arrests and deportations. That will continue.
Okay, so that's the borders are Tom Homan. Guys, you may be aware that we are in a partial government shutdown, including TSA, including FEMA, and including the Coast Guard, which is really annoying to me because we're out there catching bad boys. We blew up another narco terrorist boat the other day, I believe, killing three people trying to smuggle drugs into our country that would ultimately kill Americans. And so you still have the Democrat Party. Literally, this is why Chuck Schumer, in my opinion, hat tip to Rush Limbaugh, is screwing up royally. When you look at AOC and her performance at that Munich security conference, it is clear that she is not ready for prime time beyond the House seat that she has. I mean, she's just let's face it, she's just not she's not bright. She's not good when it comes to policy, except for dragging the country left, spending more money, becoming more morally bankrupt, or just falling into socialism, communism, so on, etc. Because that's easy. Just take more of what the people earn. Use government to use the money that you take from taxpayers to build up the size and scope of government, give away goodies, bring in illegals. I mean, this is all easy stuff. But when it comes to keeping America secure, when it comes to making sure that China doesn't invade Taiwan, she doesn't have a clue. She doesn't have a clue. So these people have partially shut down the government. And guys, listen, frankly, in the past, I didn't care about government shutdowns, but these ones aren't going anywhere. They're not shutting down ICE. The men and women of ICE are going to continue to, well, they will get back pay. They're not stopping their operations. So what is this for? What is this about? What is this going to accomplish? I wouldn't mind shutting down parts of the government permanently. I would still like to see the Department of Education completely shut down. I'd like to see the EPA completely shut down, even though we will get into those endangerment findings, although I'm not sure that we'll get into them tonight, but perhaps another night. So here you have Tom Homan. We have the most secure border in the history of the nation, and Democrats are upset about it. Why are Democrats upset about it? Because it's the same thing. This isn't about ICE. This is about votes. This is about power. And as long as Democrats, again, we've said this time and time again, as long as Democrats can't cheat in elections by using illegals to vote, what other reason would you oppose voters showing ID except that you want to cheat? What other reason is there out there? Think of everything you have to do with ID. It's insane. But yet, not when we go vote. To get your welfare, you have your identity. You have to be recognized. You have to have ID. I mean, this is absolutely insane to me. And so this isn't going to stop. But the left, again, this is about power. This is what have I said time and time again? They want the story to be about ICE. The story really isn't about ICE. ICE is a distraction. The ICE agents are the distraction. Oh, they should all have cameras. I'm okay with them having cameras. They shouldn't be wearing masks. I'm sorry. When death threats are up 8,000%, they need to be in masks. We can't identify them. Yes, you do. They still have the badge number. But we're not going to have you, and they have their uniforms on, but we're not going to have you, threatening them. We're not going to have you doxing them, doxing their family members. I don't want them wearing masks too, but I tell you what, tell the Antifa, the BLM protesters, not protesters, rioters, these antagonists, these obstructionists, tell them to take off their masks. Democrats want power. How do you get power? You bring a bunch of illegals into the country. You put them in blue states. You spread them out in red states to the best of your ability. And then when you have to count those heads, because that's the way that we count our census, it's not citizens alone like it should be, but it's just anybody that's in the country. And so as a result of that, congressional districts are formed, electoral votes are formed, a federal government funding. I mean, this is insane. So this is what the left needs. Again, I'm convinced that places like Minnesota, places like California would not be these Democrat strongholds were it not for illegals in this country. Let's go to another video. This is Chuck Schumer. This is a very bad mistake on Chuck Schumer. This is cut number 6. He continues to smear the brave men and women of CBP and ICE. I think this is political theater. I'll explain. Cut number 6, please, Gabe.
And finally, and maybe most important, no secret police. No police department in America doesn't identify themselves, but these guys wear masks. They don't have cameras. We need masks off. We need cameras on, and we need every ICE officer to be identified.
No. Keep the mask on. Uh, turn the cameras on. I'm okay with that. They don't need to be identified, except that they identify themselves as ICE. I understand that, and again, I prefer that they don't wear these masks. But could you imagine Chuck Schumer? Chuck Schumer, i- he's in a statewide race. I mean, when if he elects to run again, it's a statewide race. I'm telling you, people are getting tired. People are getting tired of the AOCs of the world. They're too far left. This is cut number. As a matter of fact, this is Harry Enton on CNN. More people are just saying the party has gone too far. Imagine if they had an elder statesman in the Democrat Party that would say our party has gone too far. This is going nuts. This is what we're going to do. A, B, C, and D. They do have that in John Fetterman. They're trying to run him out of the party, but with numbers comes strength. Imagine if Chuck Schumer would stand up to AOC, to the radical wing of the party. Let's play cut number one. This is what CNN has to say about the Democrat Party. They are becoming too liberal, and Chuck Schumer isn't doing anything about it. Cut number one, please.
Democratic base, right? But what about all Americans, right? How about all voters? Voters who say the Democrats are now too liberal. Look at this percentage. It was 42% in 96, 48% in 2013, now 58% in 2025 of all voters say that the Democratic Party is too liberal. The Democrats are moving to the left, the far left is gaining power, and there could be some electoral repercussions because what we see right now is voters, the clear majority, say that they are too liberal.
This is really interesting. Thanks so much, Harry.
Thank you,
Really
Kate.
appreciate it.
This is really interesting. Thank you, Harry. I mean, her voice is kind of weird for a woman, but nonetheless, hopefully some Democrats are paying attention to this. Hopefully they're waking up. I think Harry Enton is trying to help them out as best he can. And that's why, honestly, guys, we don't know what's going to happen in the midterms. You guys got to get out there and vote, encourage people to vote. Listen, I know it's annoying saying, but we need Republicans to hold on to power and to gain some power to get stuff done, to get more of President Trump's agenda done. I know there are a bunch of spineless, gutless busters, if you will. Many of them are, but there's many that are not as well. But we also know that they don't want to destroy the country, but sometimes they're complicit because they're too weak and they're spineless. Let me play this too. This is Hakeem Jeffries. This is the House Minority Leader. He doesn't care about the increased assaults on ICE. Why? Because he believes it's working for them. I'm not sure that it is. Cut number 4, please, Gabe.
They point out that assaults against ICE officers have gone up over 1,300% this past year, from about 275 compared to 19 the year before. So there are some legitimate concerns about those agents being targeted. But your broader point about whether or not law enforcement should behave the same as other law enforcement is heard.
Yes, and we're going to continue, of course, to encourage the American people to exercise their constitutional rights, their freedom of assembly, and their freedom of speech, and their freedom of expression peacefully, as we saw overwhelmingly done in Minneapolis.
It was peaceful in Minneapolis when you have people like Renee Good using their cars to block law enforcement officers, when you have people like Alex Preddy. I know people were trying to say they were executed. No, Alex Preddy wasn't executed. Listen, he didn't have his gun on him at the time. They knew that he did have a gun, and you're free to take a gun to a protest. But I'm sorry, if you're dumb enough to get into a physical altercation when you have a weapon with cops, it's just dumb. I feel bad that they're that they're both dead. But I do feel like, listen, they should have made smarter choices. But again, the distraction is ICE, guys. The real issue is power. I believe what the Democrat Party is doing is it's basically a quid pro quo. That's what we saw in Minneapolis. You have these fraudsters and politicians that are complicit, politicians that are turning a blind eye to the fraud as long as the fraudsters fill their campaign coffers with money. That's what we're seeing. They're doing that, and they're using illegal immigration. That's why the distraction is ICE. ICE needs to get as many illegals out of the country as possible so Democrats can't cheat with illegals, and we need to deal with the fraud that is funding a lot of the Democrat campaigns, in my opinion. All right, guys, listen, I appreciate it. I wanted to do a little more tonight, but we're just on time constraints. I'm going to have Mark Morano on. This EPA deregulatory action is one of the biggest things that the Trump administration has done, and it's not sexy, so a lot of people aren't talking about it. But I'm going to break it down with Mark Morano. I probably will be releasing a separate short podcast on. I don't believe there's no such thing as President's Day in the United States of America. Believe it or not, it's what we celebrate, but it should not be called President's Day. So I'm going to offer an argument for that. Frankly, I had one tonight, but we would just have to go too long. So I'm just going to do a separate podcast out there. I'm not even sure that I'll do that live, but I'll make sure that I put it out there. But these are some of the things that we need to start winning back. I mean, I'm inspired by Rubio's speech as well. So these are some of the things that we need to start taking back. We need to take back our culture. We need to take back our heritage and our history. Guys, we don't have a perfect history, but no country does, because there's no one perfect except Jesus Christ. The world has seen some pretty crazy and evil stuff. As a matter of fact, I mean, why are people so into the Epstein, the Epstein information? Because there's still human trafficking out there. There's still sexual slavery out there. There's still slavery out there. And so we just don't live in a perfect world. We're not going to see a perfect world until we get to heaven, for those of you that have accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. So anyway, guys, I appreciate you tuning in. And until next time, do not grow weary doing good. God bless every single one of you.